This is Let's Talk with Liz, and I am Liz. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to talk about something that I think has been misunderstood for a long time, the role of women in the Bible, misunderstood stories. Now, I know this is a topic that can stir up a lot of different opinions, but I want us to look at it through the lens of Scripture, using the Amplified Bible to bring out the richness and depth of these stories. And here's the key. We're going to dive deep. So let's set aside any preconceived ideas and really focus on what God is saying through these women's lives. Let's start with a scripture that has been so often misunderstood. Proverbs 31:10-11 says, "An excellent woman, one who is spiritual, capable, intelligent, and virtuous. Who is he who can find her? Her value is more precious than jewels, and her worth is far above rubies or pearls. The heart of her husband trusts in her with secure confidence, and he will have no lack of gain." Amplified Bible. Now, a lot of people read Proverbs 31 and think it's just about this ideal woman who has to do everything perfectly. She's the perfect wife, mother, businesswoman, and homemaker all in one. But that's not what's happening here. Pause. This passage is not meant to be a checklist of perfection. It's a celebration of the strength, wisdom, and character of a woman who is fully living out her God-given purpose. And that's where we need to shift our focus. The women of the Bible weren't perfect, and they weren't confined to one role or one idea of what womanhood looked like. They were dynamic, strong, and faithful in unique ways. Pause for reflection. Let's look at some of those stories. Take Deborah, for example, in the book of Judges. She wasn't just a leader. She was a prophetess and a judge, guiding the nation of Israel with wisdom and strength. Judges 4:4-5 AMP says, "Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. She used to sit to hear and decide disputes under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites came up to her for judgment." Here's what's groundbreaking. Deborah was trusted by both men and women to lead in a time when that was highly unusual. Her role was given to her by God, not by cultural expectations. She wasn't limited by her gender. She was empowered by her faith. And here's the real kicker. Deborah wasn't just a leader. She was also a wife. The Amplified Bible makes it clear that she didn't forsake her marriage while she was fulfilling her calling. She was a woman of balance. And her story shows us that God calls women to leadership roles without asking them to sacrifice their identity as wives or mothers. It's about complementing, not competing with the roles that God has placed in our lives. Let's talk about Mary Magdalene for a moment. Mary is often remembered for being freed from 7 demons, Luke 8:2. But her role in Jesus' ministry is so much more profound than just that one moment. She was one of the first people to witness the resurrection of Christ. In John 2017 AMP, after Jesus appears to her, he says, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene was entrusted with the message of the resurrection. Think about that. The first person to proclaim the good news was a woman. In a culture that often sidelined women, Jesus chose Mary to be the first messenger of his victory over death. And here's something we can't overlook. Mary's story reminds us that women are called to be bold proclaimers of the gospel. It wasn't about her past or even about her gender. It was about her faithfulness to Jesus. He honored her faith by giving her the most important message in history. That's groundbreaking, and it challenges any notion that women in the Bible were just passive bystanders. They were active participants in God's story. Now, let's address another misunderstood figure, Martha. She's often portrayed as being too busy with housework, especially in comparison to her sister, Mary, who sat at Jesus' feet. But I think we need to dig a little deeper into Martha's story. In John 11:21-22 amp, when her brother Lazarus dies, Martha says to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give to you." What's powerful here is Martha's faith. Even in her grief, she knew Jesus had the power to raise her brother. Martha wasn't just a busybody. She was a woman of deep faith who knew who Jesus was and trusted in his power. Sometimes we reduce her story to just being about the tension between doing and being, but there's more to Martha than that. She had a relationship with Jesus built on trust, and she had the boldness to speak to him about her deepest grief. Her faith was active, and that's something we can all learn from. The women in the Bible were not defined by their circumstances. They were defined by their faithfulness to God. Pause. And that's the key takeaway here. God doesn't call us based on our roles or status. He calls us based on our willingness to serve him, no matter the situation. Whether it's leading like Deborah, proclaiming like Mary Magdalene, or trusting like Martha, the Bible shows us that women have always played an essential God-ordained role in his plan. In today's world, there's so much confusion about what it means to be a woman, what our roles should be, and how we fit into bigger picture. But when we go back to scripture, we see that God's design is not about restriction. It's about empowerment through faith. It's about using our God-given gifts in ways that honor him, whether that's in our homes, our workplaces, our churches, or wherever he has placed us. And thank you so much for joining me today. If this message gave you new insight or a fresh perspective on the role of women in the Bible, please like, comment, and subscribe for more faith-centered discussions. Let's continue to seek God's wisdom, stay rooted in his word, and walk confidently in the roles he has called us to. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.